What's poppin'? What's poppin'? How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of Life According to Rick. Happy Friday, Junior. It's Thursday, and today we're going to be doing things a little bit different. I know normally I drop my episodes on Friday, but today we're going to make an exception and we're releasing a little bit, a day earlier. So today I'm going to be hopping on a flight in a few hours, and I'm going to be kicking off my birthday month celebration, going down to Miami for the weekend. So I'm pretty excited about that. But I honestly thought about taking a break for this week, but then I thought to myself, like, you know, it doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? I've been dropping an episode consistently every week now for about 15 weeks. This is episode 15. And it was just one of those things where I was like, nah, I'll record my episode and, you know, drop it a day early before I head out. Especially because this week it's been one of those weeks. Like work has been super crazy. It was super stressful. And Harlem got sick. You know what I'm saying? He caught the flu and he wasn't feeling like himself. Once we see him, like he's mad chill and his eyes was looking mad droopy, you know, I was like, nah, he something ain't right with him. And then he started feeling warm. And it was just one of those things, when kids get sick, they be super needy. And especially him, he goes through those moments where like he just wants his mom and then he wants me. And then the other day I got off work and like it was snowing and I'm like, what's happening? Like I wasn't expecting snow. And so it was nasty out. The roads were nasty. People were driving cautiously, it was mass slippery. And my wife also got sick and she it hit her hard. She had the body aches, she wasn't feeling like herself. And so she was home with Harlem. And so when I got off work, I went and grabbed dinner. I said, you know what? When I get to the crib, I'll take over so that way, you can get some rest. So that's exactly what I did. I got home. I told Harlem, come on, papi, let's go downstairs. Let's go eat dinner. We sat at the table. You know what I'm saying? We ate. We did a little Facebook live. You know what I'm saying? And then he was chilling. He was watching TV. I took advantage. And, since my wife was out of commission, I said, you know what? Let me clean the kitchen. I did the dishes, you know what I'm saying? And then, it was already getting close for his bedtime. So I was like, let's settle down. And we came up. I gave him a bath, gave him his medicine, you know what I'm saying? So that way he can get a good night rest. And he was down for the count. So I was able to, take advantage, pack my bags. So now I'm ready for my trip, and it's going to be an amazing weekend. I'm super excited because tomorrow is the World Baseball Classic, and we're going to be going out to the Dominican Republic baseball game, which I'm super hype about. And I can't wait to be down there and get some quality time with the family, but also reset mentally. Uh, i need i need this little getaway, even though I would love for my family to come down with me, but It's just a quick trip. And then next week will be my birthday, and then the following week, my wife and I are going to Vegas, which I'm super excited about that trip because we're actually gonna have, some alone time and, and basically a vacation. Long overdue, you know what I'm saying? Because we never really get to do those type of things, where we can go on a trip and not worry about, Harlem and what's going on. And he's gonna stay with grandma, so it's gonna be a good time. But today's topic of conversation is, life doesn't pause for you. And that's a fact. Because just, based off what I've told y'all so far, I have a sick child, a sick wife, having to, come home after a long day of work, gotta tend to my baby, I gotta tend to my wife, make sure that she's good, you know what I'm saying? And all trying to maintain the household, you know what I'm saying? So to take the load off of her because she's not feeling good and she's out of commission, is one of those things where, it's a partnership, right? It's never 50-50 or 100-0, you know what I mean? There's going to be days where it's going to be 70-30 or 60-40, whatever the case is, you know what I'm saying? But in real marriage, true partnership, there's always going to be somebody that has to step it up a little bit more. And in this situation, that's me. You know what I mean? So I got to make sure that my family's good. So I'm always going to be over the top, regardless if I'm, you know, hanging on a thread and I'm super tired, which I'm always tired. But if I can make things easier for my wife, especially with her being sick, I want to make sure that she's 100%, especially with me going away. She's gonna have to stay home with Harlem. So I gotta make sure that she gets all the rest that she needs. When it comes to weeks like this, marriage is not romance. It's teamwork. Everything shifts around. It's, oh, you got him, can you go grab this? Or, hey, can you cook dinner? Or I'll do the dishes, so everything is straight so you can cook dinner. Or, why don't you take a break and I'll take care of it. That's what it be looking like in a partnership. We're tired, obviously, and we're in it together because when your kid is sick, it's not about who's more tired. It's about keeping the house steady, keeping the energy calm, not letting the stress turn into tension because, you know, things can get chaotic when the stress turns into tension. But I'm learning something in weeks like this. Love isn't always the highlight reel. Sometimes love looks like surviving the week without snapping on each other. And it's crazy because last week we talked about seasons we rush, right? Being kids and wanting to grow up fast. We couldn't wait to be adults. We wanted that freedom, the independence, what I'm saying, that grown status. But nobody rushes towards this part. Nobody says, I can't wait to be stressed about work and have a sick kid at home. Hell no. Who wants to deal with that? But that's the reality we living in. You know what I mean? But this is a season two. And this one, you can't fast forward. You can't skip it, and you definitely can't tap out just because it's heavy. You just got to show up and be present. Even though you're tired or you feeling like you're stretched yourself out too thin or you're feeling overwhelmed, we just gotta push through it and get it done. The job is never done. It's a nonprofit full-time job. You know what I'm saying? When you're a parent, you know what I'm saying, and a partner, you know what I'm saying, husband or wife, whatever the case is, it's always 24/7, 365, you heard? And pretty soon I'm going to be heading down to the 305. And I'm super excited about this trip. And if I'm being honest, it this trip is going to be a little bit different for me. It's been 5 years since I've gone down to visit the fam. Um, I was so used to going down there so frequently to go visit my grandmother and spending time with her. And I remember the year after my grandmother had passed away. I went for a weekend for my birthday, and it definitely felt kind of weird for me. Like it was kind of surreal. I couldn't pick up the phone and say, "Mommy, estoy aquí," voy a verte, like I'm gonna go see you. You know what I mean? So I think after that trip, it kind of took me back, and it just didn't feel right for me. You know, not not going down there, not being able to see her. So the fact that I'm gonna get to go down there and spend time with my family is I think it's gonna be good, and I'm pretty happy about it. And Saturday is gonna be like a get together with all the cousins, and it goes back to what I was saying in last week's episode, growing up in that Dominican household, us being the kids, watching the adults, and it's kind of like now full circle. Now we the adults, and all my cousins and their kids are gonna be us, you know, running and playing and just having a good time and everybody vibing. We wanted to be grown when we were kids, always rushing, and now we're the grown-ups making those moments happen for the next generation. It's heavy, it's joyful. It's everything a season is supposed to be. I used to think growth only happened in big breakthroughs, big wins, big realizations, big life changes. But sometimes the growth is quieter than that. Sometimes the growth is in holding it together, in choosing patience when you're stressed, or choosing to be calm when everything feels chaotic. We choose to show up for your family even when you're feeling drained. Life might not pause for you, but you still get to choose how you show up in it. So if you're having one of those weeks right now where it feels like everything is stacking up, work, family, pressure, responsibility, just know that you're not alone. This is a season two, and seasons pass. Until then, just keep showing up, one day at a time. And like the great Rocky Balboa says, one round at a time, one punch at a time. So that's going to conclude today's episode of Life According to Rick. I know it was a little short, quick episode, but I felt like it was important for me to drop the content, quick little convo before I head out. And, because life doesn't pause, and neither do we. So if this one hit, share with somebody who might need it. I appreciate y'all for rocking with me always, especially on those real weeks where things get pretty chaotic. But I love y'all, and I hope y'all have a great weekend, and I will catch you guys next time.